Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on Device Administrator Deprecation. I'm Lorna Malia, Marketing Manager at Barcodes. We're so excited, to share with you guys how Google is deprecating Device Administrator with the help of Soti to make Android even more secure, powerful, and productive for your business. We've got lots of great content to share with you today, and we've got a great lineup. We've got Damon Greaves, who is the sales engineer at Soti, and he's going to be discussing some of the key takeaways of Android Enterprise and Mobi control policy management differences between Device Admin and Android Enterprise. And then we also have Corey Campbell, who is the platform specialist at Google. And he's really going to be talking about some of the benefits of modern management with Android's enterprise and some of those best practices for switching from legacy device administration APIs. So, with that, I'm going to hand it over to Damon. Damon, it's all yours.
Thank you, Lorna. Hopefully everyone can hear me on the webinar. Okay, so go to the next slide. Okay, so let's talk about all the key takeaways you're going to get from this webinar. So first, you're going to find out what is Device Administrator, what does it mean, and how does it affect you? And we're also going to talk about why is it going away? What's the reason Google is moving away from Device Administrator and moving on to Android Enterprise? That will segue to what is Android Enterprise and what does it mean for your business and for your devices you have out in the field? The benefits of Android Enterprise, and also from migrating from a DA or a device administrator setup to an Android Enterprise setup. So these will be the key takeaways from this webinar. I'm going to hand it off over to Corey, who's going to go into a deep dive on device administrator and Android Enterprise.
Thanks, Damon. So we are going to kind of start off by taking a look back at device administrator and the history there. And as Damon mentioned, then we'll move over into kind of what our vision or the reason we started Android Enterprise and the benefits that we see there. So if we take a look back, Device Administrator was actually added in Android 2.2 back in around 2010. And it really was a way to enable kind of local administration or enable applications to enforce local policies on a device. But it was never really intended to be a full-on enterprise management solution or set of APIs. So I think, we saw some of our partners such as Soti at the time were looking for ways to manage Android devices, and Device Administrator was the best way to do it at the time. And so that's why you see that kind of evolved to be the management solution that you're seeing on Android devices. But we actually announced back in December of 2017 that we're going to do away with Device Administrator, and I'll go into a little bit more detail as to why we're doing that. But just to point out a couple of things here, and we'll cover the timeline in a little more detail as well. But with Android Pie, the APIs are actually will be marked as deprecated. They'll still work on your devices running Android Pie, but any devices that will be able to upgrade to Android Q, you want to look at getting those devices on Android Enterprise because starting with the release of Android Q, those APIs will no longer be available. So why is it going away? So as I mentioned, Device Admin, or DA as we call it, really started out as being a local administration solution. So in the world of enterprise mobility, the controls that it allows are kind of rudimentary. It's not typically enough for what we're seeing our enterprise customers need. From a security model, there's a much better and stronger security story on the Android Enterprise, and we'll talk about that a little bit, as well as we were seeing certain applications leverage some of the device admin APIs for certain malware and ransomware types of attacks. So we really wanted to make sure that we were only allowing certain control to our EMM partners, and we were doing that through Android Enterprise. And of course, the last one being with DA and the way that we were working with our different OEM partners, there were some challenges from an API standpoint, especially when you talk about consistency across devices. So from a usability standpoint, and for customers, there also were some challenges. Again, a lot of these were kind of based around the fact that DA was never thought of, or from its inception wasn't really built to be an enterprise management solution. So you had some identity and settings challenges. Basically, there wasn't really a good way to get Android applications down to a device without leveraging either a personal Gmail account or an enterprise having to manage a spreadsheet of Google accounts that they were manually inputting on the devices. There were challenges around how permissions were handled. So when an application is downloaded, do you want the end user to have to accept all those permissions? Or do you want to accept it on their behalf and really have full control over how that's handled? From an enrollment standpoint, making sure that the enrollment process for Android devices is seamless and simple and can be handled by an end user, especially a non-tech savvy end user. And then again, that fragmentation across OEMs and across OS versions, and having kind of an inconsistent management experience based on the OEM of the device. So seeing those challenges, and again, and some of the things that I mentioned on the previous slides, we really wanted to build a solution that had enterprise first, that started out as being, we're keeping our enterprise customers in mind as we build in APIs and functionality. And really that's what the inception of Android Enterprise was, formerly known as Android for Work. And of course, we've rebranded it as Android Enterprise. And some of the benefits I'll go into a little bit more detail. But we really wanted to make sure that there was clarity and consistency in the ecosystem in terms of the APIs and the usability and experience across the board, across OEMs devices. We wanted to make sure that we were putting full ongoing support moving forward. So any new features, any new functionality, again, with enterprise first in mind, as opposed to just local administrations on the device. So some of the benefits of AE over DA. So again, when you did device administrator, it was a one-size-fits-all type of rigid management experience. So the device was fully controlled, and for different use cases, there really wasn't much of a change on the device side, right? So when you're talking about BYOD, you still, if you enrolled a device using DA, you still had full control of the device. Technically, you could still see certain things that were on the quote unquote personal side of the device. Now, you may have in your Mobi control console, disabled collecting of certain data, but still at an OS level, you were able to collect those things. So with Android Enterprise, we wanted to make sure that we actually provided a some flexible management options. So we introduced work profile mode that give you true separation of work and personal at an OS level. So not only are they separately encrypted and separately secured, but it is impossible for the EMM IT administrator to go in and see any personal data, because that's been segmented at the OS level. So none of that data would be able to be collected. So still giving you that user privacy. We introduced the concept of a fully managed device mode for your corporate owned devices. You still want to really, if you want to lock down a device or really just have control over of all sides of the device, then it gives you that full management, fully managed experience. And then we also recently introduced in Android Oreo the ability to kind of combine the two. So this is a scenario where you have a fully managed device, or it's a corporate-owned device that you want to control certain things about the entire device, but you still want to allow the user to do certain personal things. So maybe you don't want to block them from downloading any application from the Play Store, but maybe you want to just block a few applications on the quote-unquote personal side of the device, right? Or maybe you want to block them from being able to install applications from unknown sources on the personal side of the device. So giving you that fully managed control, but also giving the user the kind of BYOD user experience, so you have that separation of work and personal. Another benefit of Android Enterprise over device admin is the flexibility of enrollment methods. So again, from a DA standpoint, there weren't very many options for enrolling. Either it was manually downloading an application from the Play store, or side loading in certain instances, or maybe scanning a barcode or QR code. Whereas in Android Enterprise, we've kind of improved upon that, right? So not only can you, from a BYOD standpoint, go into the Google Play Store and download the Soti application to kick off enrollment, but you can also, there are other methods as well, right? So there's QR code enrollment, so you can scan a QR code right from startup to kick off the enrollment process. There's NFC bump, so you can bump a device to kick off the downloading of the application to start the enrollment process. There's DPC identifier, so when you start up a device, you can actually type in AFW hashtag Soti and be able to download the application to enroll. And then, of course, the newest one that we've introduced, and I think a very seamless process and a very easy onboarding process, is zero touch. So really being able to start up a device, and the first time it connects to the network, it realizes that it's supposed to be managed by Mobi Control, and it'll automatically put that device under management, kick off the enrollment process, and make sure that that device is secured, and doesn't require that your IT help desk needs to touch each device to enroll it. You can actually send that device directly to an end user and have it go directly into management. So application management, as I mentioned, with the DA side, the way it used to be, there wasn't good integration with Google Play, so it was difficult to manage Google accounts in terms of how do we get Android applications down to a device through the Play Store. If you were leveraging certain additional controls or certain container controls, you may have had to do app wrapping, which isn't a very scalable process. And then, of course, when you're doing side loading, that would require turning on unknown sources, which could be an additional security attack vector. So with Android Enterprise, we wanted to really tie in the strength of the Google Play Store, and so we introduced the concept of Managed Google Play, which allows you to push down public applications and private applications to an Android Enterprise device without having to worry about configuring a Google account on that device. That account can be configured over the air for you, silently install those applications. And then, of course, you get the benefit of the full Play Store, right? So alpha, beta publishing of applications, rollout management, updates are handled, or deltas are only pushed for updates so that you're not consuming bandwidth. There are tools for collecting crash reporting and things like that. So again, all the benefits that Google Play provides, and pushing that into the Android Enterprise. And as I mentioned, from an app wrapping standpoint, then you don't have to worry about wrapping all of your applications, because that Play Store lives within the work profile. Any application on the Play Store that you push down to the device or is installed by the end user on that device is then secured by the container of the profile. And then overall device management control. So we mentioned, inconsistency across OEMs in terms of support and APIs. The DA was a battery-intensive solution and really only had limited device control. So Android Enterprise really adds on that. We're giving more extensive controls. We've been working really heavily with our OEM partners to make sure that there's a consistent experience across all our devices, and actually still allowing them to have easy ways of differentiating the support on their devices. And then, of course, the look and feel is native. So for your users that are bringing in an Android device because that's what they use on their personal for their personal device, or they like the look and feel of the native applications, this is all native, and it's a user experience that they're used to and love. So we talked about some of the benefits of Android Enterprise. Definitely, there's many more, and I would recommend reaching out to your Soti contact to talk about that in more detail if you like. But let's talk a little bit about, so device admin's going away. So what's changing? What does that mean, right? When is that happening? How does that affect you? What's happening moving forward? So here's a quick timeline of what's happened over the years with management on Android. So as I mentioned, prior to Lollipop, we introduced device admin, and then in Android Lollipop, we introduced Android for Work, or now Android Enterprise. And we've, added in these features that you see here in the timeline. The really important part about this slide that I want to kind of tackle is the right-hand side of the slide. So, as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, the DA APIs that will be deprecated are going to be marked as deprecated within Android Pie. Again, what that means is they'll still work, but for our developer partners, they will get notified that, hey, these will be going away, so you want to start using different APIs. And then in Android Q, in 2019, when that's released, those APIs will be fully removed. So we'll provide some guidance a little bit later on exactly what that means or what we recommend in terms of migrating. But the key component here is if you have any devices that are currently under management that will be upgraded to Android Q, if they're not on Android Enterprise, you want to look at moving those devices over to Android Enterprise, because once they get upgraded to Q, some of those DA APIs will no longer be available. And if you're adding any new devices today, you want to make sure that you're adding those devices or managing those devices with Android Enterprise and not device admin. So I made mention that, hey, there are DA APIs that are being marked deprecated and being removed. You may ask, well, what are those APIs? And here's kind of a list of what's being removed. And of course, you can find this online at android.com. So we are removing some passcode policies. So DA management solutions will no longer be able to specify the passcode quality, right? So if there's a certain number of characters that are required, if it requires special characters, things like that, you will no longer be able to do that starting with Android Q. We are removing the ability to restrict certain things with DA. So restrict the camera, restricting certain key guard settings. Again, that'll be removed in Android Q. And also keep in mind, there are equivalent functions for all of these APIs that I'm talking about in Android Enterprise. So if you want to do restrict the camera and things like that, you can definitely enroll a device in Android Enterprise, fully device managed mode or work profile mode, and be able to do some of these things. And then last and probably one of the most important things is DA devices or DA device administrator applications will no longer be able to remove or restrict a user from removing DA privileges from a device. What that means is if the device is enrolled with a DA application, and previously you could stop a user from unenrolling that device by restricting them from removing DA privileges, you will no longer be able to do that. So starting, this was actually introduced in Android Nougat, users will be able to remove DA privileges from a DA application. So again, the overall I think thing to keep in mind here, and I think the message that I want you to walk away with is that DA is being deprecated, and really the future of Android management is Android Enterprise. So, moving forward, anything you're looking at doing on your Android devices from a management standpoint, you really want to start looking at doing it with Android Enterprise. So what now? Right, so we've talked about the benefits of Android Enterprise. You see, what are the things that you'll be able to do, and the more flexibility and more functionality you get with Android Enterprise. We've talked about the challenges of device admin and the timeline for deprecation. Well, you've got some Android devices managed with device admin today. So how do we recommend that you move forward and migrate over to AE? And I'm just going to touch on kind of 4 key areas here. So the first thing is going to be analysis. Really what this boils down to, and these are really kind of general areas for any type of migration that you're doing. But you want to look at what is it that you're doing on your Android devices today. Go into your Mobi Control Console, take a look at the policies that you have set up, and really document the requirements that you have or the things that you're doing today that you want to make sure that you're able to do on Android Enterprise. And I'll hand over to Damon here to talk a little bit about that in the Mobi Control console.
Thank you, Corey. What you're looking at is, for everyone that knows about Soti Mobi Control and the profiles, these are two separate profiles. One is a DA profile, a device administrator profile, and another one is an Android Enterprise profile. Now, when you look between the two of them, there doesn't seem to be that much difference between the two. And that's kind of the experience you're going to be getting between an Android Enterprise and a DA specific Android policies. The only difference you can see between the two is that one, in terms of restrictions, says lockdown, which for those that have used the lockdown feature before, is our kiosk mode. In Android Enterprise, which is actually the image over on the right, it just says kiosk mode, but it's the exact same thing. There's no difference between what I show for a lockdown for an Android that's utilizing device administrator compared for an Android device that's utilizing Android Enterprise. We both can set up Wi-Fi configurations. We can also set up authentication and push down certificates. So these are some of the main policies that are used, and there's many more as well that are available within the Android Enterprise offering. All right, Corey, back to you.
Great. So, and this will, I think the good thing about this is this makes it very easy from that analysis standpoint of what I talked about in terms of looking at what it is that you already have set up today, and then making sure that you can map those over to features in Android Enterprise. So the fact that there's not much change in terms of the UI here for Mobi Control gives you the ability to kind of do that one-to-one mapping really easily. And that's kind of the next section is once you've done your analysis on what it is that you already have set up in Mobi Control for DA, you want to map those to particular features within Android Enterprise so that you can set up those policies for Android Enterprise. You can also additionally look at maybe there's certain use cases that you weren't able to do previously on Android that maybe features in Android Enterprise now allows you to do, so you can add those within your requirement mappings. And there's a couple of things that you want to keep in mind. So from an enrollment standpoint, right, maybe the way that you've been doing enrollment previously, because as I mentioned with Android Enterprise, there are a few more options, then you can maybe change how you're handling your enrollment based on the use case, based on different groups, right? So for devices that may be, you know, in a factory floor that are locked down, you may want to do like QR code or NFC to easily bulk enroll those devices, or devices that you're sending out to users in the field that may not be the most tech savvy and be able to walk through an enrollment process or a detailed enrollment process. You may want to set up those devices with zero touch enrollment to make it much easier on the end users, right? So keep in mind the enrollment processes that are available and include those in your requirements mapping to make sure that you have those documented. Another thing that you want to keep in mind is your device selection. So as I mentioned, the DA APIs will be deprecated, will be fully removed in Android Q. So what that means is you may have different strategies based on the types of devices that you have. So if you have devices under management today that are leveraging DA APIs, but those devices will never get upgraded to Android Q, let's say they're older devices that won't support Q, then you don't necessarily have to worry about those devices, right? Because they're never going to get to the point where those APIs are going away, at least in the immediate future. But devices that you have that will be upgraded to Q, or devices that you're purchasing now or will be purchasing in the future that will have Q or ship with Q, then you want to make sure that those devices get on Android Enterprise. And a good way to do that is there are a few different ways that you can actually see what devices are kind of recommended by Google. So we have on our Android.com page a device catalog that shows just about all the devices out there that run Google services and support Android Enterprise. and then even a subset of those that we've tagged as Android Enterprise recommended. And what that means is those devices had to meet a particular set of requirements in terms of hardware requirements, so certain memory requirements and things like that. As well as they had to be able to support a particular set of features, right? So they had to support things like zero-touch enrollment, right? And they had to support certain things within the Android Enterprise API set. And another thing from a security standpoint, they had to, or the OEMs had to commit to a 90-day security patch minimum. So, they can do shorter, so you can do 30 days, 60 days, push out those security patches if they like, but it couldn't go any greater than 90 days. So from a security requirement, that these devices not only get the Google stamp of approval from all the other things I mentioned, but also from an update standpoint, at the very least, we'll get those security patches on a 90-day cycle. So again, once you kind of have your requirements mapping and you've thought of these things in terms of what it is that you've done before, what it is that you've maybe want to add on to what you were doing before, and then what are the types of enrollments and device is that you will actually have out there, then you can actually kind of move on to the next key area. And the next key area is going to be applications. And the reason that we kind of separate applications out as a separate key area other than the requirements mapping is because applications in Android Enterprise, or how you do application management in Android Enterprise, is really different from how you've probably been doing application management in the past. So you want to take a look at what are the applications that you're deploying out to your devices today. What it is that you're doing with those applications. Are you wrapping them? Do they have a particular SDK deployed for a certain functionality? Are they public applications? Are they internal applications that your internal developers have worked on? And really document what those applications are, what they're doing, and where they're coming from. And then you'll be able to upload those applications or add those applications to the managed Google Play Store and create rules and policies around how and who those applications go to. I talked a little bit before about the benefits of managing Google Play. Or managing your applications with Google Play. You also do get the benefit of our Google Play Protect, which does scan applications to make sure that they aren't doing anything that we consider potentially harmful. So whether it be something on one end of the spectrum that's malware or ransomware and actually a malicious application, or whether it's something on the other end of the spectrum that's just maybe poor coding practices. Maybe these are internal applications that you've developed, and in their testing, your developer has put credentials or username and password in clear text into the code just to make it easier for them to test, and forgot to remove those credentials before trying to push those out to devices. Those are the types of things that our application scanning will catch and protect you from any of those types of poor coding practices, things like SSL implementation and things like that. As well as the ability to leverage some of the distribution tools. So as I mentioned, being able to push out to an alpha group, a beta testing group, staging your rollout so they only go to 10% of your devices, let's say for the first week, then you collect crash reporting or you collect reporting on how the app is doing. And if you wanted to then roll out to a larger group, you can do, larger 30, 40, 50, all the way up to 100, right? And as I mentioned, from an update standpoint, only pushing the delta of an application update, so it's not pushing out the entire application, therefore saving on bandwidth. And then, of course, for our global customers, you get the full benefit of the Google Play Global Cache, right? So if you were pushing out applications internally before, then you had to worry about replicating where those applications lived across the world and different servers, and make sure that the devices have access to those servers. Where with Google Play, of course, that Google Play is global, so you have the ability to download those applications from Google Play without having to worry about replicating those. those servers. So lots of benefits of Managed Google Play. Just take a look at the applications, what you're doing with your applications today, and then you can push those out through the Managed Google Play Store. And of course, it is the full Google Play Store. It is curated, so you approve the application, so the user only sees the applications that you approve, but you can approve any application that lives on the Play. So any third-party vendor, any productivity tools that you would use, you no longer have to worry about wrapping those applications or those things being outside of your container. You can push those out through the Play Store and get the full protection of the work profile. And finally, proof of concept. So after you've created your analysis documentation of what it is that you're doing today, and then you also add in your requirements documentation as what are your requirements based on your analysis, also based on any new use case that you may have. And then you've also documented the applications that you've got, how you're using them, where they're coming from, and which users they need to go to. Then you can take all that and really build out a proof of concept in your mobile control console. So then start building out your Android Enterprise profiles and policies, and you can push out to your own devices or devices of your IT team to test. Maybe push out to a smaller group of users, maybe users that are more susceptible to change and are maybe a little bit more tech savvy, and will give you some valid feedback on what's working well, what's working differently, what maybe needs to be added, what things need to be changed. And then as you kind of finalize and shore up your proof of concept, then you can start looking at actually pushing that over to production. So I'll hand over to Damon again to kind of talk about how you can get help with your proof of concept stage.
Thank you, Corey. So for any information in terms of wanting to get potentially started on a POC for Android Enterprise, you can obviously contact Lorna here, and also at Barcodes, and also anyone from your Soti representatives as well, to get you started on Android Enterprise. And this is the future of Android management, everyone. We just want to make sure that you at least get started and understanding about it now, before it's too late, obviously. So if you do have any questions, please let us know. Yep. And Corey?
No problem. So just to conclude, I think there's kind of three things that I want everyone to leave here with. So as I mentioned, with the timeline, the DA APIs really are being removed in Q. That might seem like a long ways away, but with any migration, I think it makes sense to start early, to make sure that you can avoid any surprises or avoid as many surprises as possible. Get your plan and POC started early, so that you have a plan in place when Q is released. Like Damon mentioned, work with your team at Soti and Barcodes to help you develop a plan, to help you through that POC process, and then developing your production rollout process as well. And because it will be a new user experience for what your users are maybe used to on with their existing Android management devices, create detailed user documentation. That'll make it easy. That'll help to answer a lot of questions without users having to call into the help desk, and make the process a much more seamless process for your end users. So with that, I think we will open it up for questions.
I think we do have 2 questions right now. Hold on. First question is there any way to test Android Enterprise without fully purchasing it? So I'll take a stab at this one. So currently, Android Enterprise is actually built into the Android OS offering. So there is no licenses that need to be purchased to enable Android Enterprise or anything of that sort. It's already built in. Your only real requirements is at least to have an Android device that is on Android 6 and above and is a GMS certified device. If you want to find out whether that device is certified, you can check it out on the Android Enterprise website and to see what devices, what are the recommended devices. Okay. There's one in the chat as well. Do you want to take a stab at that one, Corey?
Sure. I will take a look here. I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time.
Oh, it's okay, Corey. I will. I'll read it off to you. So Evan said, with over 400 Android OEM partners and countless enterprise customers, how far would you say, Google is, in educating the market on the importance of transitioning from DA to AE?
Oh, I would say this is probably this is easily the top two goals within our team. Maybe the number one goal in our team. That is actually one of my main priorities here at Google, and my team's main priorities. We work with our ecosystems, not only our EMM partners such as Soti, but our OEM partners as well, and customers to really start messaging that, hey, DA is going away and you really want to get on AE. There is a set of resources that you will see come out from Google shortly in terms of best practice guides, and things like this, like webinars and blog posts and documentation for how to, if you have existing DA devices, how to migrate those things over to Android Enterprise, or if you haven't made the decision to go to Android Enterprise, what the benefits are there and how you can get started in testing and seeing if it fits your use cases. But I would definitely say that this is probably, if not the number one, the number two goal within our group at Google.
Does anybody have any more questions?
I think another one just got posted up again, Lorna.
Yep. Let's see here. So somebody else asked, could you share those best practice documents post-webinar? I think we definitely can do that, Corey. We can partner up together and do a document and send it out to everybody.
Yeah, I think we can. So as I mentioned, in terms of the kind of official documentation from Google, those haven't actually been released yet. They should be released here shortly. So once those are officially released, we'll definitely be able to send those out.
Perfect. All right. Does anybody else have any more questions?
There was someone that was on the Zoom chat. I believe his name is Fred. So he was asking kind of in terms of how is Google making all this happen with Android Enterprise? Is it similar to Apple's DEP/BPP program? And he's just kind of wasn't really clear on how Google goes about managing these devices in the manner of Android Enterprise. So I did answer it I replied to it in the chat, but I'll just reemphasize what I typed in. So again, as I said earlier, Android Enterprise is already embedded within the Android OS as of Android 6. If you are looking for a zero-touch type of enrollment style, there is zero-touch enrollment that's provided by Google. There is a methodology behind it, very similar to Apple's device enrollment program in terms of how you get the devices and uploading them into a portal and then assigning them to our Mobi Control web console. So when the device is turned on for the first time, or if it is factory reset, the device will enroll into Mobi Control. Hopefully that answers that question.
Perfect. Yeah, I just responded back to him as well.
Yeah.
Anybody else Q&A on the chat? All right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us today. You know, we had such a great turnout. You know, we really appreciate your time and hope you guys learned a lot. Please reach out to me directly via phone if you guys have any questions at 877-346-9053, or please go ahead and just email me directly at lmalja@barcodesinc.com. Thanks so much, everybody.